Hello, everybody. Welcome back. We are here at day 5 of our LAC Virtual Summit. It's been such a great week of learning and sharing and hearing what all the different schools in our collaborative have done to build their cultures of data use. And I'm so excited to be a part of the team that is helping schools to learn and grow and share together. So my name is Emma Burns, and I'm the Professional Learning Coordinator at Consilience Learning, which is the organization that runs the Learning Analytics Collaborative, who's sponsoring this event. And I'm just going to quickly tell you a little bit about the Learning Analytics Collaborative in case you don't already know. If you've got any questions after this, please reach out because we'd be more than happy to organize a demo call for you and your school. As you can see, we are both a platform and a service for schools that want to use learning analytics to improve and transform. And our mission is really to support your school to build a culture of data use. We believe that when data is used purposefully, it has a real impact on schools and on teaching and learning. And so what we do is we help you to collect all the data that you have in your school, not just the academic data, also the demographic data, well-being data, social emotional learning, everything that you've got as a school. And we collaborate with you to figure out the best way to present that data as information. And then we teach the users in your school how to use that information so that they can gain insight about your learners. We have over 100 visualizations in our collaborative, and each one of them has been customized to answer the questions that schools have. So we have dashboards for teachers that want to see different assessments for their class in one screen. We have dashboards for specialists. So for example, learning support teachers who want to see the impact of their interventions. We've got dashboards of high-level aggregate data for administrators and boards of directors that need to see things over time. And we have dashboards for parents and students who want to zoom in and see an individual student's learning journey over their time at the school. We're all about sharing the learning. We have over 50 schools in our collaborative from all over the world. And when any one school develops a new assessment visualization or a new data discussion protocol, we share that information with other schools so that everyone can learn and grow. One of the new ways we're doing this is with our virtual summit. As I mentioned, it's been such a great opportunity to hear where every school's at and find those common threads in what schools are doing to build that culture of data use. Our next speaker is Jessica Butler. She is the deputy principal at Sunway International School, Iskandar in Malaysia. Prior to this, she was the assistant principal of the high school at the American International School, Vietnam, which was an LAC school. And she worked really closely with the LAC team to use well-being data to inform the academic and pastoral programs. So I'm really excited to hand over to Jessica to share with us some of that journey. Thanks, Jess.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Let me go ahead and share my screen. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for the opportunity to be here today, to be able to talk about well-being data and how we can use that to really integrate that information into our academic and our pastoral frameworks at the classroom level. And for me, when I'm talking about the classroom level here, I'm not only talking about how teachers are putting it into their practice, but also how we're really incorporating that student voice and student engagement with the data conversations. So let's go ahead and get started. At the end of this presentation, I really hope that you walk away with some thinking points here today. I really want you to be able to think about what are some strategies that you might be able to do to engage your teachers with data conversations, no matter where you are in your data journey. Whether you're at the very beginning stages or you have a fully established data culture, how are you initiating that conversation to really get them hooked on the next step? And then 2, really thinking about how you can engage your students with those data conversations to really have that whole picture thinking. We're going to be kind of exploring these two concepts by looking at two particular strategies that I used at my previous school in Vietnam. We as a school use these strategies, and we specifically use them with student well-being surveys and with academic progress reports. So as we go through today, I really invite you to think about how often you're collecting this data. Are you collecting your student well-being survey data, once a year or twice a semester? How often are you collecting that academic progress report data? Once a semester? Is it biweekly, bi-monthly? Really thinking about all that information you have and how you're kind of integrating it and using it to its maximum potential. And then I invite you to think about what teams are actively engaging with that information because it tells us so much. How much of it is staying here at the top versus how much is making its way all the way back down to the student level. So to give you a little bit of context, we were an IB continuum school all the way at PYP, MYP, and DP. And for several years, we had a school-wide focus specifically on inclusion. And then as we were coming out of a post-COVID context, we added in that emphasis on relationships, but specifically through an inclusion lens. So everything that we did within the school, we linked to these two concepts to some degree. And we had some very strong systems of support. We had a comprehensive student support team consisting of counselors, restorative justice support, academic support, inclusion, as well as EAL instructional coaches, etc. Great community leaders who really supported our students at kind of a tier 1 and tier 2 level and really helped to develop our advisory and our social emotional learning curriculum. Subject team leaders who work directly with their subject departments to really build the curriculum and help to kind of flesh everything out, grade 6 through grade 12, and the curriculum support team, which, fun fact, Emma was a part of. And our curriculum support team really worked closely with teachers to kind of coach them in all things IB and best practices to support our students in general. Addition to this, we had a very comprehensive advisory program, and it was structured in a really unique way. On Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays, our students would meet with their advisory teachers for the first 10 minutes of every day. And it was really meant to kind of have a positive start and a really positive connection to set the tone for the rest of their day. And then on Wednesdays, we would have an extended advisory lesson where we could really dig into our social emotional curriculum and specific grade level needs. Additionally, we had a professional learning session scheduled for every Wednesday. So we had about an hour every Wednesday morning where we could really dive into these database conversations together as a team. And finally, we also had common planning blocks with each subject department. So all of our science teachers had a protected common planning block to plan 3 times a week. And I really wanted to highlight these structures of support because these structures that we had built within our leadership systems and within our timetable really allowed for us to maximize some of the strategies that we used moving into the future. So to kind of give you a glimpse into our journey, pre-2020, which feels like a lifetime ago, we had some pretty limited but very informal systems to measure student well-being data and academic progress. We were doing it, we just didn't really have a consolidated or systematic way of measuring it and kind of tracking it throughout the years. We were very much in the early stages of building our data-informed culture because our focus at that time was more on supporting and integrating like map data and WIDA data into our systems. And then COVID happened. And as we started kind of moving into that distance learning framework, we realized that what we were doing for academic progress reports, which were student-led conferences and end-of-year terms, it wasn't enough in that new context. So we introduced holistic progress reporting, and it was every 2 weeks. And we were really feedbacking on 3 particular strands. And the focus was on learning, not necessarily on the grade, because we really wanted to communicate with families how their child was doing in each and every subject. And this tool in particular became a very useful indicator for our student support teams and flagging students who might need a little bit of additional support. So right away, our teams were already using that data to be able to support students. 2021, we are still online and distance learning. And at this point, we realized we need a little bit more data. And this is when we introduced our periodic well-being student surveys. And we were issuing them at this point in time about once a month to be able to track students and get a little bit of additional support and more information. And in 2022, now we're back to face learning. And at this point, we realize that our focus really needs to be on relationships and how we can connect all this information through a lens of relationships. And now here we are, 2023 and moving forward, and we have all these systems in place, and we're thinking about how we can progress and modify and make sure that these systems are staying fit for purpose in our new context, in our post-COVID context. But our next step was building in that student voice. So a little bit about our student well-being surveys. We as a school, we chose to self-write them. So we did not have an external provider or a paid service for our student well-being surveys. And there are limitations to that. But what this allowed us to do was really take our time with developing the questions. And we definitely needed a few tries to get this right. Because we learned a lot throughout the process that we weren't necessarily asking the right questions right away, which is okay. It's a journey. But we were able to reach out to our counselors. We were able to reach out to our grade community leaders. We were able to reach out to our subject department team leaders and really ask them what do they need to know to be able to support their students and curate a series of questions to be able to meet all of those different lenses of well-being. We were then able to get all of the questions and responses translated to really increase access to those responses. So we were getting as accurate data and information as possible. We decided as a school that we wanted to administer them at least twice a year to be able to kind of review intermittent trends. And it really helped us to see some of the interventions we put in right away, if they were working or if they were not working. And because we self-curated them, it gave us a lot more flexibility to update and amend, which we needed when we realized we weren't asking the right questions. And to give you an example of this, one of the key questions that we were asking was, do you have a trusted adult to talk to at school? We wanted to make sure that even during that COVID setting, every student had someone that they could reach out to. And when we got that information back, we realized it wasn't telling us what we needed it to tell us. So we curated the questions a little bit more deeply. We brought this information to our teams, to our pastoral and our academic teams, and we revised some of the questions. So this turned into multiple. It turned into, well, do they have trusted relationships with any adults in their life? And how can we use that to support the students? It turned into, well, adults at school, they maybe have someone to talk to, but do they have someone that they go to specifically when they're feeling stressed with their classes, when they're struggling to keep up with timelines, et cetera? And do they have someone to go to when they're struggling and need a little bit more pastoral support? From this, we realized we still needed more information. And so in the next iteration, we started asking not only do you have someone to go to, but if you need support, do you know how and where to go to access it? And we differentiated this point for academic and pastoral support and student friendly language. And it provided some very enlightening and surprising information. What we found was that our 6th through 8th students reported quite high that they did have a trusted adult to school at school, and they did know how to get academic and pastoral support. They did know how to seek it. They may not have been actively doing so, but they were reporting that they knew how to get it. Our 9 through 12s, the numbers were very low, like 10–15% of the cohort that was responding that they knew how to get access to that academic and pastoral support. And that was quite surprising for us because we kind of, I guess we made an assumption with our own advisory program that our older students who'd been there for a while would be comfortable and familiar. And so that was a nice flag for our advisory program to add that explicit component of teaching how to advocate for yourself. What are our resources at school? How do you use them? what are our resources outside of school? And so we were able to see lots of progress and growth in this question as we moved along. And then finally, let me slide this over so I can see it. We wanted to focus on the academic aspect of well-being data here. And this was really informed by our subject team leads because we wanted to know where students were perceiving heavy workloads and why. Were there particular times in the year when it was happening? Was it particular subjects? Was it consistent throughout? And we wanted to know why students were reporting they weren't feeling ready for assessments. So we were able to tailor questions to really understand if students were just feeling overloaded, too many at one time, maybe the instructions weren't clear, or maybe the language readiness wasn't available to us. And students were able to report back and give us that information, which was incredible. So once we had all this information, there was a lot that the students were telling us, and it was a lot to unpack. And we were looking at it as a leadership team, thinking about how we were going to present it. And we realized that there were still questions that we needed answered. And those questions we knew our teachers were going to be asking too. So what we did is we actually went and interviewed students from each grade level, and we asked them a series of tailored questions to be able to get a little bit more information. And we came back with some really incredible stories. For example, one of our students reported being on a bus for 90 minutes each way. So that was 3 hours of her day that she was on a bus plus the school day. And then when she got home, she was taking care of her family, had tuition, etc. So that's why she was reporting not getting a lot of sleep at night and being really tired at school. And so we had these students that were telling us their stories, what they needed, what they wanted from their teachers, what they enjoyed from their teachers. And they, in those videos, were able to kind of lead and guide that professional learning conversation for us. They set the frame of what they wanted and what they needed so that we could really unpack that data and really engage in a data conversation protocol. And it was also really important for us to connect it to systems that we already had in place. We already had an established advisory, so we really wanted to connect unpacking that well-being data with our advisory program and really giving teachers the agency and the ownership to bring those conversations into their advisory lessons to really build those connections and really build those relationships. So the protocol that we used, what I really loved about it, we were very heavily influenced by the data-wise protocol and really looking at the ladder of inference and kind of really focusing on what the data tells us without making those assumptions first. But we weren't super incredibly rigid with this protocol. We allowed for a lot of flexibility and a lot of authentic conversations to come out from using this protocol. And we had some critical frameworks at the beginning because we wanted our teachers to avoid drawing conclusions too early. So we were really mindful about presenting overarching information and overarching general data to help teachers kind of step away from some of the assumptions that they were holding. And we really emphasized the need to focus on what they could control. So it was very easy to kind of think about all the different barriers to learning that exist. But when we keep the conversation focused on what we can control, even if it's a teeny tiny sliver in this crazy world, it allows kind of an actionable item. And what was really beautiful about this learning protocol is that we were able to take it into all our different sections. We were able to use this protocol with our team leaders. And I remember the first time I brought it into a team leader meeting and we looked at the well-being data. I remember one member of my team saying, "This is the well-being data. We're academics. This is a little bit more for our GCLs and for our SST, right?" And we kind of took that back a little bit and we talked about the relationships between well-being data and academic support. And we had a lot of aha moments when we were able to kind of connect and bridge that gap. So our team leaders really looked at it from an academic lens. And then we took it to our GCLs and they looked at it from advisory lens and how they could use that to really build their relationships in their program and advisory. And our student support team used it to figure out what are some new interventions that we could do and to evaluate and assess if what we were doing was working. And it allowed us to have a really interdependent nature in using the same data set but looking at it from different lens and perspectives within our department, which was really cool. There are some limitation considerations when you're kind of using this approach. Of course, you have to consider the reliability of the data. Are students giving you honest answers, or are they just clicking? That's always going to be a consideration. But even more importantly, you need to be very mindful of your data management and how you're sharing that information, because you're going to be getting a lot of sensitive data, and you want to be aware of how much you're going to be releasing to what individuals, and really having those frank conversations about the importance of protecting that data. This third bullet point, I actually added in after watching one of the LAC presentations, and that's being really mindful of getting student consent when you're surveying them. Um, and particularly, you want to make sure that students understand what you're asking. What is the purpose that you're asking? How are you going to be using that information so they're completing these surveys authentically and with full understanding? And then once you have that information, you want to get that student buy-in. So making what you do with that data visible, not only to teachers, but to students. And I think that was a really powerful move when we had that initial well-being survey, and we brought students in and we interviewed them, and they knew the purpose of that interview because they knew that their voice was being heard, and it was in response to their engagement. So we were able to maintain that buy-in every time we rolled out the survey. And then finally, making sure once you send it out that you have that follow-up support ready for students so that you can immediately respond to any concerns, and just to be prepared to support them if anything does arise while they're completing the surveys. Switching gears a little bit into our next strategy is our academic progress reports. So I talked to you briefly about how we started this process at the beginning of COVID, and it developed over time. And we really wanted the focus to be on learning, not on the grades. And we found it to be quite successful, and we had a lot of teacher buy-in, and we were rolling it out and continuing it throughout the years. But at year 5, we realized that we weren't necessarily utilizing this resource to its full potential. We knew that it was enabling us to engage in timely intervention, and that we were actively using that as a student support team. But we were able to get students that were already kind of at the tier 2, escalating into tier 3 students. We weren't necessarily catching our students that were moving from tier 1 to tier 2. We knew that our progress reports were allowing us for homeschool communications. Parents liked receiving them. The language was always consistent. It was always a uniform structure. They were getting data and information from all of their subjects. But we also wondered if parents and students really understood what the standards and criteria meant. And then finally, those progress reports are really an opportunity for student self-reflection and agency. And we realized that we weren't necessarily engaging our teachers in conversations about progress reports. We were engaging our student support teams and our middle leadership teams. We weren't necessarily engaging our teachers. And we also were not engaging our students in that reflection. So we decided to bridge the gap and do both of them at the same time. And so what we did is we took those 4 criteria and we re-emphasized it's the learning, not the grade. And so we made that data more visible to a wider audience, specifically to teachers with very mindful parameters and expectations. And we added in a new structure into our established advisory program. And that was Talk It Out Thursdays. And it was an opportunity and an invitation for teachers to really have one-on-one conversations with their students, to look at their data and teach them how to kind of track and collate their information over time to see their own trends and their own progress and celebrate their own successes. Have those conversations peer to peer, have those conversations peer to teacher. And it really increased awareness on what those progress report values meant. It built credibility and it built buy-in, and it really engaged teachers and students to think about what they were seeing and the patterns that they were coming across. I'm going to go ahead and close it out, but I'd like to leave you with a few different takeaways. First, no matter where you are in the journey, even if you're at the beginning stages or if you're quite established and you're trying something new, start the conversation with your current systems and frameworks. It's a very easy access point to be able to get teachers involved and to really start thinking about how they can use data to inform their practice in multiple ways. Remember, it's a marathon, not a sprint. This whole journey that I talked about, that was 5 years in the making with lots and lots of iterations and lots of mistakes. So you're not always going to get it right the first time, and that's okay. So give yourself grace, give yourself time, give your teams grace, give your teams time. Use flexible but structured protocols. Really help structure the way that you want those data conversations to shape and to grow to be able to inform action, but allow them to be flexible enough to be authentic and allow your teachers to really find meaning and purpose and an agency and take the direction that they want to go. Remember to focus on what is in our control and to really take those bite-sized pieces. And finally, consider where and how you can bring students, not just teachers, into your data management conversations. Thank you. You guys have any questions?
Thank you so much, Jess. We had a question from Chantel. She was asking about how often are the Talk It Out Thursdays?
So we set that up to be every single Thursday. So every day had a different theme. So Mondays was morning announcement Mondays. Tuesdays were Dear Tuesdays, so drop everything and read. Thursdays were Talk It Out Thursdays, and then Fridays were Fun Fridays for something like quick and fun and exciting during those morning advisory times. But we gave teachers the option to choose how they wanted to structure that Talk It Out Thursday.
Is that like is that during the morning advisory? So how long a session do you have with them each week?
So morning advisories were 10 minutes on Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and then we had the extended advisory on Wednesdays. And it was structured enough for maybe the teacher could connect with 2 or 3 students each time.
Awesome. Thank you. I hope that answered for you, Chantel. Feel free to unmute if you want to add any more questions. Anyone else got some questions for Jess?
Yes. I see it's asked, but you gave them some prompts. We did give them some prompts. We gave some teachers some guiding questions to kind of help them structure the conversation, but we left it open. So we invited them to think about how they could use it to teach ATL graphing skills and charting skills. And then we kept the focus again on the learning, not the number.
Great. I see Chandra's unmuted. You have a question for Jessica?
Yes. Hi, Jessica. My name is Dr. Chandra. I was just wondering, how are you?
I'm doing really well. Thank you.
I'm sorry I came late, but it looks amazing. So thank
Thank
you.
you for coming.
That's all. No questions, really. Just how are you?
And for everyone's reference, a lot of this work came from the beautiful mind of Dr. Chandra McGowan.
Well, I helped, but it was a very big team effort. So thank you.
Jessica, it's as someone who was also part of that big team effort, but I wasn't there to see the later steps that you're talking about. It's really been interesting for me to see where this grew and how you guys took the data and evaluated like what's working and how can we make it better. And where it like grew to develop, I think is really cool and really inspiring. I know a lot of schools are saying, oh, we've got it, we've kind of figured out what we're doing at the teacher level, but our next step is students and parents. And you guys have really like taken some really big leaps in that area, I think, which is really inspiring for a lot of schools, I'm sure. And one thing that I remember from those days was that I think the students bought into doing the surveys because the why was so clear to them.
Mhm.
And I remember you showing them the aggregate data in the Monday meetings and things and saying, you know, this is how many people have completed the survey and this is how many people still have to complete it. And this is what we're seeing. And this is what we're putting in place as a result of what we're seeing. And if you want to be part of that change, you need to do the survey. And I think that really helped build that buy-in from the students.
Yes. Hi, V.
And Chantel says that that you were building a really strong program. So
Thanks, Chantel.
Any more questions for Jess before I stop the recording? All right.